Hey, welcome to Believe in Clemson Football. I'm Will Vandervoort. That's Alex Dodd. Appreciate you guys joining us today as we get you set for Clemson Louisville coming off a bye week. So this is actually an extra edition of Believe in Clemson Football, if you will.
Last week, 2 for 1.
Two for one. Exactly. But unlike other podcasts, we do ours every week, regardless if the Tigers are playing or not. So we appreciate you guys joining us this week. And as we get you set for the big game in Death Valley, 7:30 kickoff on ESPN. Alex, I think this is about as big as it gets, in my opinion. I hope everybody listened to Dabo Swinney's press conference today, because you may look at Louisville and see a 5-3 record and think they're just an average football team, but all three losses are by a touchdown or less, and they are just a few plays away from being 8-0. This is a very good football team, and Clemson cannot think like they're going to just go in there and roll.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We're also, I feel like, in this stretch of the Clemson season where we're going to say for a few weeks, like, this is the biggest test that Clemson's had since Georgia. We're kind of in that flow now. We're going to say that for a few weeks in a row.
This is the biggest game because it's the next game.
Yeah, there you go, Dabo. Yeah, but this is the biggest game on their schedule so far, and Louisville, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot in a couple games that they were in position to win. I mean, they were right there neck and neck with with SMU in that game, and ended up losing in a back and forth battle. So this is a team that can bite you, so you can't take them lightly. And I'm sure Dabo's been saying that as well.
No, he hasn't, and I got my notes from today's stuff. Everything Dabo said. We'll go over that a little bit later when we preview the game.
You were digging in the archives over there to your right.
Yeah, that's what I was digging for. I was digging for my notes because Coach Swinney was very. He spent a lot of time on Louisville. Let's just call it what it is. He spent a lot of time on the Cardinals, and I understand why. When you start looking at their numbers, and if you've watched them, I've watched them all season. They're not a bad football team at all, man. They can beat anybody on any given day. And like I said, they're just a few plays away. So if you got questions for us on the podcast today, please give us leave us a comment on in the comment section, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube. We'll be able to see those comments, and we definitely will try to answer the questions as we go along. We always appreciate you guys joining us, and you also want to let you know if you're not watching us, or that's kind of stupid because if you're looking at me now, you're watching me. However, you can also
if there's some week where you can't make it, or if you got to leave, you got to cook dinner, you got to take your wife out, you're going to watch the Yankees lose the World Series tonight.
Yes. If there's some reason that you can't make it, you can also go to Believe in Clemson Football. It's available on basically everywhere you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, wherever you listen to your podcast, Sirius XM Radio. You can find us there each and every week, as long as we're talking Clemson football. So trust me, most of the time that's the case. So that's why it's called Believe in Clemson Football.
We do extra editions that never get posted, like every Saturday and sometimes on Thursdays at like 10:30 at night.
If y'all could listen to those podcasts, those would be really enjoyable. Even though we'd have to put a rating on it. Which I don't want to necessarily do. But please, if you can't listen to us, watch us today on Tuesdays. You can check us out there on Spotify or Apple Podcast and more. Also want to go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsors, the Clemson Insider, for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics and recruiting. Go to theclemsoninsider.com and check out all the stuff. Jason Priester and you guys, some of you guys right here, you watch Jason's show on Monday nights, as he does a great job answering all the recruiting questions. Man is in the know when it comes to recruiting. I don't care, who you think's better. Nobody's better than Jason. So go check out his stuff. If you miss him on the podcast, you can go check him out at the Clemson Insider. He always puts the podcast up over there as well. So you can go find that on our message boards if you missed it. And then also, we got up to the second coverage of the game, all the way leading up to the Louisville game, during the game, and after the game. We'll have all the coverage for you as well. Also, Alex, We got Clemson basketball started. We started that. I got a story that's going to be up on the website later tonight. We got
a Clemson baseball game. Here in a week.
A week from Thursday.
Yeah, Clemson's a week from Thursday against the Savannah Bananas.
I will be there. And I will be there covering the game. And so kind of interested to see covering it from a Clemson standpoint, but it'd be fun to watch the Savannah Bananas as well, but also have a reason to go cover Clemson baseball at this time of year, because usually that's not the case because it's fall baseball. So it's going to be cool to do that. So we got everything at the Clemson Insider. So go check it out. Again, the Clemson Insider, the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics and recruiting. By the way, Sam Walters will be at the soccer game tonight, so we'll have that up as soon as the game's over. A recap of the Tigers, hopefully another Clemson win, is that Mike Noonan has got those boys rolling right now, Alex.
Well, we talked about this, I think, in an early episode when they kind of had a slow start to the season. And I know there were people on Twitter who were like, I can't believe Clemson, lost to Holy Cross or whatever. I'm like, guys, this is a Mike Noonan soccer team. Give them time. They're going to gel, and they're going to be rolling by the time you hit the middle of the season. And here we are as this team kind of closes in on the second half of the year, and they are red hot. I mean, probably the hottest team in the country.
They are, and they're exactly. I was talking to somebody today about it, like this same conversation, and I said, listen, what people don't understand is Mike Noonan puts his players through one of the hardest fall camps you can have. And they are exhausted when they get out of it. Some are injured, and it takes them a while to kind of like the regular season's a piece of cake compared to what they do in camp and everything. So, Mike is he does as good a job as anybody getting his team better and better as they go throughout the season. So, Alex, you're exactly right. They're hitting their prime. They're ready to make a run. You just know that ACC tournament's coming up here in a couple of weeks. They'll make a run there. And I know without a doubt they'll make a run in the NCAA tournament. Does that mean another national championship? I'm not saying that's the case because it is hard to win a national championship in any sport. Soccer is even harder, times two.
But they do have the pieces. They do have the pieces.
But they got the pieces to make another run. They do. They're one of the best soccer teams in the country. And I think they're ranked number 2 in the country right now. So they started off at 1, dropped all the way back to number 22, and now moved all the way back up to number 2. So that's what Mike Noonan does. So that's and he gets his guys ready to go. So Coach Noonan in soccer, good luck to you guys if you're watching. I hope you guys go on another long run and make things interesting for us. Today on the podcast, though, we're going to talk a lot of things. We're going to talk about interesting that Clemson lost on the bye week. I'll explain what that is in a few minutes. The first college football playoff rankings will be revealed on November 5th. We're going to explain why that's important for Clemson in this Louisville game.
November 5th, a big day for America for football and otherwise.
I think it's more football. I mean, I know there's this election thing going on, but it's really more about the college football playoff. Let's just be honest.
We're going to be watching the TV with our, on the edge of our seats late at night, and we're probably not going to be watching the election coverage. We'll probably be watching the college football playoff rankings reveal.
Exactly. As you know, this is championship phase for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson football program. We'll kind of go into a little bit of that today as well. And then Dabo Swinney gives us a little thoughts on Tajh Boyd and Sammy Watkins. If you don't know, this is Hall of Fame weekend at Clemson. Tajh Boyd and Sammy Watkins, both Clemson legends, are being inducted into the Clemson Athletic Hall of Fame. So that's going to be this week, and we'll Coach Swinney's going to talk about just what those two guys mean to the Clemson football program and what they Tajh, what he did in his time, and then obviously what Sammy did in his time. And it's real good stuff from Coach Swinney, and so I know you guys are going to enjoy that. So with that said, though, Alex, we'll kind of go up here and we'll explain, Clemson had a bye week last week, but they ended up losing in this bye week. I've never seen a team lose a bye week, but Clemson did. They lost a bye week.
Clemson has a knack for losing the bye week. I don't know what it is. They just can't seem to perform for the AP poll voters on the bye week. It just never. It never seems to fail. They just can't get it done for the media on bye week. I don't know what it is.
No, it is. And in case you guys don't know, Clemson went from number 9 in the polls, took the week off. Everything's great. Everything's hunky-dory. And then the AP polls said, you know what? we don't think Clemson's number 9 anymore. I know they didn't play this week, but we'll drop them 2 spots to number 11 because Notre Dame went and beat powerhouse Navy, who hasn't won anything since the 1940s, and
turned the ball over 6 times.
And turned the ball over 6 times. And also, we got to keep the a number of SEC teams in the top 10. So, Texas A&M knocked off LSU at home. So they subsequently get to jump everybody in front of them and push everybody else back. So I don't understand that. Like you can have both. You can move Clemson up in the rankings and you can move Texas A&M and Notre Dame up in the rankings. You don't need to just have them jump the other teams.
Well, here's the thing, Will. When you're an AP voter and you look at this and you think about Missouri, who ain't worth a god dog, hadn't done anything this year.
Still right.
A terrible football team. And for whatever reason, because they went on the road and beat UMass, I guess, they're going to stay in the top 25 after they got bludgeoned again by Alabama. An Alabama team who, mind you, is not a great football team. They're a good football team. They're not a great football team.
Correct.
But when you keep teams like that, low-tier SEC teams that don't deserve to be in the top 25, when you keep them in there, it gives you a reason to justify those other teams being in the top 10. I mean, because let's be honest, when you look at the top 10, what SEC teams do you think deserve to be in that top 10?
Georgia deserves to be in, and Texas.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep, I agree. 100%.
I don't think Texas A&M deserves to be in the top 10 right now.
And are we really fooling ourselves thinking that Notre Dame, who lost at home to Northern Illinois, is number 8? Is the number 8 team in the country? They're better than a BYU team that's actually beaten a ranked team.
And Notre Dame, they beat Texas A&M.
Yeah, okay. Notre Dame's beaten ranked teams.
I give them that they beat a ranked team, but they have the worst loss of anybody in the top 15.
Yeah, and you're supposed to look at that. Now, here's the thing. If these college football playoff rankings come out next week and people are talking about quality of loss as being a distinguishing factor, it's going to piss me off because it shouldn't be. Like, who you lost to shouldn't be the way that we weigh you, but it should be a fair tiebreaker, right? If you don't have a common opponent, if the teams are basically even, and everybody has a bad day. I'm not saying that Northern Illinois is better than Notre Dame, but are we really going to go and say that this team? Yeah, here we go. Bye week 35, Clemson 6. Tigers just didn't show up on offense on Saturday when they played the third string defense, it's just. Man, I don't need to get going because I'll be going for 45 minutes on this. Because I know I'm pretty sure I called you on Sunday and was like, Will, what the hell is going on with these guys? I mean, Brett McMurphy dropped Clemson like 4 spots in his poll after he had Clemson like number 7 last week or number 8 last week.
Yeah, just dropped them in the polls for no reason. I mean, you can't justify dropping Clemson. And it wasn't just Clemson that got dropped. Iowa State got dropped too. And I'm like, okay, undefeated Iowa State got jumped by undefeated BYU. And undefeated Iowa State was on a bye week. What?
It's just a sad Saturday in Death Valley playing nobody. And Randall, we see all of your comments, Randall. We'll get to them at some point during the show.
Yeah, we do. And please, everybody else, please comment as well. We appreciate you. Hey, listen, I don't understand it. Like, I'm going to say the word. I don't care. I can bitch because I was an AP voter at one point, so I can bitch. Because here's why. Because I did my poll justifiably. In other words, what I meant is I took the time. I would stay up late and watch. Back then, I would watch Pac-12 after dark. I would watch all the games, and and trust me, it's taxing. It is. It's hard, especially when you cover one team like I do. It's hard to see everybody, but there's a way to do that, not just look at box scores. Okay. And then I took the time to pay attention. Like, I never punished a team for being idle. Like,
and what's the difference? What's the difference between Clemson and Texas? Can some of the AP voters explain to me what the difference between what Clemson's done on the field is versus, what Texas has done on the field? Because I can't think of a signature win that Texas has either.
That's true. Yeah, and everybody wants to.
I mean, they beat a Oklahoma team. Sorry, Brent Venables, an Oklahoma team that can't move the ball 6 inches. They beat them at a neutral site. Is that the best win that Texas has?
That's their best win so far. Yes, it is. It's like, and
they're the number 6 team in the country.
And I get people want to say Clemson hadn't played anybody either, but Clemson's been dominant though. So you give Clemson credit for taking care of business against bad teams. None of those bad teams, these 6 wins, have had a prayer against Clemson. I mean, the game's over by halftime in every single case. The game's over by halftime. Charleston Southern would at least get receiving votes for a top 25 if they join the SEC. John, you are absolutely correct. That is exactly what would happen if they join the SEC. It's crazy, man. And listen, like I said, when I did the poll and I had a team that didn't play, wherever I had them ranked that week before, because I did my rankings, a new ranking every week. So my rankings weren't always the same, but I never punished the team who didn't play. I didn't say, well, they didn't play. I didn't care if they coming off a loss or coming off a win. I didn't punish them. If I had them at number 9 that week before, then they're number 9 this week because they didn't do anything to move up or do anything to move down, in my opinion, in that sense. And AP voters, I don't know, like Brett McMurphy, I'm like, what are you doing? You can't take a team who didn't do anything this week and just say, well, I thought they were number 8 last week, but I'm changing my mind. I don't think they're number 8 anymore. I'm going to go ahead and move them down to 12. That's ridiculous.
And Tiger fan 24, I get they beat Michigan on the road. And, it is tough to go on the road. It's tough to win a game like that. I'll give you that point. I'll give you that point. But let's also not act like this is last year's Michigan team either.
They're not. Michigan will be 7-5 at the end of the season.
Yeah.
What are they?
And LSU, that LSU stays at 16, even though they lost to a 500 USC team at a neutral site. But
yeah, and LSU's going to lose another game. They are. LSU will lose another game this year, but they won't fall out of the top 20.
But they get to stay at 16 because they beat an unranked Ole Miss team.
And here's my thing.
Ole Miss team is not
here's
ranked
the thing
anymore.
that really pisses me off.
Or I guess Ole Miss is ranked 19th, but
I understand ESPN's bias toward the SEC because there's monetary reasons behind it. They're putting a lot of money investing into the SEC. So I get it. As much as you want to hate it and you can't stand watching ESPN because of it, they're putting a ton of money into the SEC. So I get ESPN's bias towards them. I don't understand all the top 25 college football voters because most of them, with the few exceptions of Reese Davis or somebody like that, most of them are writers like me and you, Alex, and they have no connection to the SEC at all. But for some reason, because somebody told them that, Missouri is supposed to be really good this year, instead of actually using their own eyes and paying attention to what Missouri actually looks like on the field, which we saw when we watched them play against Boston College. I mean, you're like, they're not really that good, and that's been proven. They're not good. Alabama, who's not Alabama by any stretch, beat them 35-0. The game was over after the first field goal. I mean, literally, it was over after the first field goal. And it's like, why do these SEC teams get so much praise and nobody else really does? Here's the ACC. They got 4 teams that are currently undefeated in their conference. They got 3 of those teams are undefeated overall. One of those teams has 1 loss. Duke, who's having his best year ever, just has 2 losses. This ACC is playing good football right now, but nobody's giving credit for it. I heard somebody make a joke about it, said the wacky ACC. What's so wacky about teams winning? I don't understand it. What's so wacky?
The only thing that's
SEC.
The only thing that's wacky is that these teams don't play each other. The only thing that's wacky is that Clemson, SMU, and Miami don't play each other in the regular season. That's the only thing that's wacky. But, people are going to look at this, and I know people in the national picture, some people seem to still think that the Big 12 is a better conference than the ACC.
I don't understand why that is.
I don't understand why
Colorado is 6-2. That's all you need to know. Colorado is not a good football team. Watch them. They're horribles at the line of scrimmage. They can't run the football. They can't stop the run. When they get into a real game and they play somebody from the Big 10 or the ACC or SEC, they're going to get their butts whipped because they can't. They're horrible at the lines of scrimmage, And Colorado looks like a Group of 5 team. They're loaded on offense with skill players and all. They're horrible on defense. and and they
I mean, they look like a Boise State. I mean, they look like Boise State.
They're a Group of 5 team. That's what they look like. BYU is a glorified Group of 5 team. So is some. I think
now I will give BYU credit for beating Kansas State at home.
Yes, I give them credit too.
And they play really tough at home. But
the conference as a whole is not that great. It's not.
Right.
And the ACC is having one of its better years it's had. And I'm not saying the ACC is the be-all, end-all. I'm not saying that either. But the ACC is not getting any credit for the amount of good football that's being played when only 2 teams in the conference are ranked in the top 15. And that's Miami, who I still think is overranked. I don't think Miami is the 5th best team in the country either when I've watched them. And I've watched them several times now this year. And then Clemson at number 11. Pittsburgh's undefeated and they're ranked 18th.
Yep. I think if you're undefeated,
good wins. Pittsburgh beat West Virginia, came from behind and beat West Virginia.
If they you're undefeated,
Cincinnati, who's like 3-2 in the Big 12.
I don't understand the justification if you're a Power 4 team that's undefeated, how you're not in the top 15. I mean, it's just I don't get it. I get how you could be like number 14 or number 15, but I don't get how you could be number 18 in the country, undefeated Pitt, off to the best start since Dan Marino was wearing the blue and gold. But a lot of this is going to play itself out, and this is kind of why you bring up the poll coming up next week. And I said this last week. I think that the college football playoff rankings, the first poll, is going to look vastly different than what the APs look like. I just can't see the committee not giving people credit with the data points that they have. And the media, I guess this is kind of an excuse for them. They don't have criteria like the College Football Playoff Committee does. So it's a completely different system, and I think it's going to look completely different when it comes out next week.
Right, and that kind of leads us into our next one, the first college football playoff rankings revealed on November 5th. This is a big deal for Clemson. We're going to get more into it a little bit with the Louisville game. This Louisville game is huge for Clemson because this is their first time to impress the pollsters, the real pollsters, the college football playoff rankings. They're going to be watching this week. Even they've been watching all year. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to be watching even more this weekend. Clemson's on national television on ESPN. So people are going to be paying attention and watching Clemson and watching this game. I remember the college football playoff is interesting, Alex. Each year's their criteria is different. Are they going to really play to the strength of schedule and say, well, you ain't played nobody? Or are they going to play to, well, you haven't played nobody, but when you haven't played nobody, but you look dominant in when you've done it, which Clemson has. And
like Texas has.
And like Texas has. And you give them credit for taking care of business when they've had to. Did Texas look good against Georgia? No. If it wasn't for the officials changing a rule in the middle after calling it one way now, regardless, I thought it was the right call in the moment, but they called it against Texas, not Georgia. And then they went back and changed it. No, I've never seen that happen before. After they've already made the call, announced the call, then when everybody got upset, they said, well, maybe we should just change it back. And what happened was they saw the replay.
Well, you saw Ohio State tried to follow in Texas's footsteps.
They did. Saturday. You saw that. Yes, which Ohio State was totally wrong. Sorry, yeah. Stephanie. I love you. I know you're a big Ohio State person, and you've been on our podcast before. But your Buckeyes, that was targeting. And it was a definition.
Well, the Big Ten said it shouldn't have been.
Well, whatever. That's because the Big Ten is like, they do like the NCAA and they cower down to Ohio State. That wasn't targeting. That was targeting. How was that not targeting?
But yeah, back to these college football playoff rankings.
Yeah.
Back to these college football playoff rankings. You talk about why this is a big deal. The committee's not supposed to look at the AP poll. They're not supposed to look at the coaches poll. Those aren't part of their consideration. They're supposed to look at what happened on the field, the metrics, what the teams have done, what they look like. So this is going to be our first real framework to see, where is Clemson in the college football playoff picture. It's going to be our first peek at that, and we talked about it last week, kind of where you want to be in that mix. you really want to be above 9. You want to be 9 and below. Those are your teams you think are at-large worthy teams. So those are the ones you're looking at. And guys, we love the comments. We're seeing all of them. We're going to get to some more comments.
Randall, we are seeing your comments. We just
Randall, we see you. We see you, Randall.
And we've read other people's comments, and we're going to get to yours, but yours are different, and they're not part of this conversation. If you want to talk about college football playoff, Randall will definitely throw it up there. All right, so so just be patient, my friend. I appreciate you. Appreciate you listening to us and watching us, and be patient. We're going to get to you. Trust me, buddy. But yeah, Alex, this is a big moment for Clemson, because I think it's important that they go out there this weekend and show America and the college football playoff people how good they are. And this is a good Louisville football team. And I think this is a Louisville football team that the college football playoff committee is going to respect, because they're going to look at Louisville's schedule and they're going to see who they've lost to, and they're paying attention. And that's going to be big for Clemson. If Clemson can go out there and execute like they've been doing and get a win. And it doesn't matter like how much they win by. I think if Clemson wins by 3 points this weekend, as long as they look good doing it, I think they're going to impress the committee. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. That's the thing is for this Clemson football team is you've got good games on the schedule coming down the pike. You guys are making me laugh. We got good games coming down the pike. You got a really good Pitt team that you're going to go play on the road. You've got a good Virginia Tech team that you're going to play on the road. You're going to get credit for those games. You're going to get credit for Louisville this weekend.
But it's how you start this week.
But
in other words,
right.
This week sets it. You don't want to be ranked you don't want to be ranked 10 to 15.
Yep.
You don't want to be in that ranking. You want to be in the top 10 if you're Clemson. That's why this week's important, because it's got to get Clemson in the top 10. Clemson needs to be in the top 10 when the rankings start, because I just talked about the SEC bias. It's real. It's there. Greg Sankey's paying people under the table. I know he is, left and right. I don't care what he says.
Will's getting the tinfoil hat out on a Tuesday.
There's a lot of money going on underneath the table, because I'm telling you, there's just too many SEC teams get what they want. And it's just the SEC always gets what it wants, and the ACC and the Big 12 are generally screwed because of it. And if you're Clemson, the SEC doesn't like Clemson. And you don't believe me, watch SEC videos, what do you call those, spoof videos?
SEC storied.
The SEC stories or the other ones that are out there, they always make fun of it. Like one guy says, it's the one team that we shall not name. Talking about Clemson. The one team we shall not name. They don't like Clemson. The SEC doesn't, has never, and will never. And they don't want Clemson in the party. And so they like to do anything they can to keep Clemson out. And that's because Clemson gives the ACC its best chance of success. Let's just be honest. And that's why they don't want Clemson in that thing. So Clemson's got to be in that top 10, because if not, it's going to be hell to try to move up for Clemson to move up into the top 10 after that. Yeah, I don't care who they beat. Yeah, they beat Pitt. Well, Pitt we don't think was good as we thought they were. I can hear that, right, Alex? Come on, can't we hear that?
100%. And, Clemson and Miami are Clemson's chances at multiple bids.
Yeah.
So both of those teams are the ACC's putting a lot of stock in them, a lot of hope in them. Not that they don't, want Pitt and SMU to keep winning too, but those are the ACC's best shots. Just really intrigued to see how this committee, views the current landscape of college football, because we see teams are a lot closer together in this picture. There's not as much separation, except maybe with a Georgia who had one bad half all season.
And Randall, I'm with you, man. I think it will be a close game for Clemson versus Louisville, but I think that's okay, because I do think the College Football Playoff Committee is going to have enough respect for Louisville to say even if Clemson were to win a close game, Clemson would still get the respect it needs. Clemson's just got to play well and win. So it doesn't have to win by 100 points. It's just got to play well and win the game. And if Clemson does that, I think that'll impress the committee enough, knowing what they've already seen the previous 6 weeks, that Clemson will get that top 10 ranking, I think, because it's Clemson, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, 100% as Will's dog chimes into the conversation.
Frankie's very, very passionate about the college football playoff rankings.
But every committee's different. There are people that roll in and roll off the committee. You have a new chair. So you want to see with these first rankings how they're digesting all the information that we're seeing. These people that are on the committee, they're supposed to be watching more football than we do. I'd like to take them up on that bet because I think I got them beat this year. But it'll be interesting to see how they take up this college football season and kind of digest that information into the poll.
Exactly. So, and we'll see what happens as we move along here, and now, Alex, it's Clemson's championship phase, and that kind of sets us up for that because, as you mentioned earlier, the schedule gets harder now, and Clemson is in a championship phase, and I'm gonna tell you how much of a championship phase they are. If they beat Louisville this week, okay, and if they beat Virginia Tech next week, Clemson is going to Pitt wearing the orange pants. Because a win over Pittsburgh will clinch a berth in the ACC championship game for Clemson. Oh, you're like, hold on. That's it. What if SMU's undefeated? What if Miami's undefeated? Man, we already got that figured out, dude. Yeah. Clemson wins the tiebreaker. Clemson's the number one seed, actually. And does it, even if Clemson were to lose to South Carolina, Clemson would be the number one seed because they would have the better conference record. Now, we don't want to lose South Carolina. I'm sorry. I don't get mad at me, people. But I'm just saying, like, Clemson would have the number one seed because Clemson's win percentage for its conference opponents, because they hadn't played anybody. That's what we heard. But Clemson's overall win percentage, conference opponents' win percentage, is better than Miami's and better than SMU's.
And we're not going to act like it's a great conference slate either. I mean, those numbers are below 50% as it stands today. But
it'll get hgetting because Clemson is playing – Virginia Tech, who's 6-3 right now, or going to be 6-3 probably this week. I'm getting ahead of myself. And then they're going to play undefeated, potentially an undefeated Pitt team. Clemson's got the hardest road with Louisville still on the schedule, with Pittsburgh on the schedule, and with Virginia Tech going to Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh. Clemson's got the hardest of the schedule of the three teams by far. Miami's going undefeated in ACC play. They've already got past their hardest obstacles.
Well, but here's the other thing to keep in mind about Miami. I mean, this is a team that's made some bad football teams look pretty good. So it's not out of the realm of like that. I mean, they let Florida State look like an offensive juggernaut on the ground. Cal. So this is a team, they like to play with their food before they eat it, and sometimes that can get you in trouble. But I still think Miami has the easiest path to remain undefeated. I think SMU is going to stumble at some point. I just don't see SMU finishing the season undefeated. They could. I mean, they're playing really good ball right now, and the way they have to go on the road versus who they have at home is favorable for them. But I think Pitt can go beat SMU. But we'll see what happens with the quarterback situation for the Panthers.
David chiming in and says, "I'm just not buying Louisville that much, though I think they are a good team, but I don't know if they are that great. Honestly, I'm more concerned about Virginia Tech, Pitt, and South Carolina."
Well, here's kind of my thing about Louisville. Louisville, they've had problems. They've kind of lost some games for themselves, but we know that they're a well-coached football team. Mm-hmm. Jeff Brom, look at all the good teams he was able to knock off when he was at Purdue. So this isn't a team you can sleep on. He knows what he's doing with the cards, but I still think Clemson will take care of business against Louisville this weekend. So don't get me twisted, but this isn't a game you can go in and sleepwalk.
No,
a lot like Virginia. Virginia wasn't a game that you could go in and sleepwalk. You had to kind of take care of business, and Clemson did. I think of it kind of like that. And this team, they beat Virginia in a close game, so a little bit better in Virginia.
Yeah, we see you, John. Miami made the refs look bad. We see you, buddy. No, Alex, you're right. I think this is a game where when you look at Louisville's skill position players, they got it all. They got a great wide receiver, one of the top wide receivers in the ACC. They got one of the top quarterbacks in the ACC. They got one of the top young running backs in the country. Yep. Okay, so they had it all at the skill positions. On defense, They got some very good defensive ends that are going to give Clemson some issues. Trust me on that. And, I like what they do on the back end to try to confuse quarterbacks and things. This is a good football team. It's not a great team, but it's a good football team. It's a team that you got to be concerned about. And we'll get more into that in a minute. But this is a team that, I am every bit as concerned about Louisville as I am the other three.
I'm not as concerned about Louisville as I am the other three. If I'm ranking those four teams in, how concerned I am about each of those four games, I'm putting Louisville on the same plane as South Carolina, and I'm putting Pitt and Virginia Tech on the road in a different category.
Here's I only worry about Virginia Tech because you're going to Virginia Tech.
Well, I don't disagree with that.
If this game was played in Death Valley, I wouldn't worry about Virginia Tech at all.
Well, I think those three
Louisville
teams
I worry about. I think Louisville's good enough to come into Death Valley and win this game. I don't think Virginia Tech is good enough to come into Death Valley and win. That's how I'm ranking it. So that's why I'm like Louisville, if Clemson's going to Virginia Tech, what makes that game difficult is Clemson's going to Virginia Tech. And that's going to be a very
I don't disagree with that.
Right, and that's what makes that game difficult. And Virginia Tech's good enough at home to beat Clemson, but I don't think they're good enough to go on the road and beat Clemson. I don't. Where I think Louisville is. I think Louisville, by the way they run the football, by the way they try to dominate the line of scrimmage on defense, they are built to win on the road. Now, they just haven't. They've had a couple bad bounces go against them. But
they were right there. They were right there in it at Notre Dame, lost by a touchdown.
Yeah.
Right there in it against Miami at home, lost by a touchdown.
Well, lost by the referees.
Yeah, lost by a touchdown by the ACC. And, they were right there in it with SMU and lost by a touchdown. So,
right.
I mean, let's not act like – I'm not acting like Louisville's a slouch. I just think Clemson should be able to take care of business. And that's what you've got to do when you're in championship phase.
Look, MX2X, I hear you, buddy. And I understand what you're saying here, but I've watched Louisville play all year and I've watched Virginia Tech play all year. And
I don't think that
I think Louisville's better. I don't
think Virginia Tech is a better football team than Louisville.
I don't think Virginia Tech doesn't have the skill players that Louisville has.
Yep.
I think Virginia Tech can do well within the trenches, and I think Louisville's got a pretty good Virginia Tech's got a pretty good defense in the trenches. But I think when you look at skill players and the skill athletes, I think Louisville's got more skill athletes than Virginia Tech does.
I think it comes down to drones and Shuck. I mean, the Louisville quarterback, he's a playmaker, and the Virginia Tech quarterback's indecisive. And I think that's the difference between the two teams offensively.
Right. And if Clemson can get, we'll get into that Virginia Tech game next week, obviously, but with Clemson, they got to get to Virginia Tech's quarterback. Help me out, Alex. I'm having brain
drones.
They got to get to him, and like you said, force him to be indecisive. That game's going to be important from that standpoint when we get into that. But right now, the thing about Clemson's got to get to Louisville's quarterback. They got to really pressure him because, as we saw last week, you maybe can question his toughness. He kind of makes business decisions sometimes, and that's I know Jeff Brom was really laid into him in that Boston College.
Well,
game.
This is the same Jeff Brom that in the XFL played with a concussion that would have killed most people.
Yes, that's what
he was out there the next week. He's like, "Is this not the XFL?" It's a little bit different level of toughness there.
And listen, I understand the young man's been hurt a lot in his career, and I get why he's indecisive about that. Why he doesn't want to go throw his head into a play. I get where he's coming from, but why he's making those business decisions. But when you're playing a Clemson that is going to be very physical and they're going to hit you hard, maybe he makes those business decisions against Clemson too, and that could be the difference in a game. You never know. I mean, it only takes that one play to make a difference. So, but the championship phase starts for Clemson this week against Louisville. Next week they go to Virginia Tech. Then the week after that they go to number 18 Pittsburgh, which could be undefeated. Depends on if Pitt's quarterback plays this week. And speaking of bonehead plays, I don't know why
Holstein. Why Narduzzi left Holstein in.
Left Holstein in when they're up 32 points in the fourth quarter. But he did, and his quarterback gets a concussion. It was bad. You know why that was a bad concussion? Because the quarterback took himself out. That's when you knew there's something, because he's like, man, something ain't right. And he went out. That's not good. Now we'll see if he gets to play or not. Narduzzi's kind of playing it off like he does up there, so we don't know if it's real or not or what's going to happen. If he plays though against SMU, I think they beat SMU. I think SMU's
I think you're right.
Recently.
I think that Pitt, and we could very easily be wrong. I mean, SMU's a dynamic football team with good playmakers, so I'm not going to act like they're out of it. But I just think Pitt. This looks like a Pat Narduzzi Pitt team. And the last 2 years they didn't. This team's good on defense. They're a chaos defense. Obviously, you saw the way they were able to scheme things up against Kyle McCord, who's an experienced power conference quarterback. They're going to be playing a guy who's not an experienced power conference quarterback against SMU. And if they're able to scheme things up and disguise coverages the way they did against Kyle McCord, it could be a long day for the Mustangs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I just – We'll just see what happens there, but obviously Pittsburgh. Then the Tigers, if they beat Pittsburgh, if they're able to take care of business against Louisville, take care of business against Virginia Tech, and they beat Pittsburgh, then Clemson's in the ACC championship game. They're in. That's why I said they'll be wearing, if they can win those previous 2 games, they'll be wearing the orange breeches going to Pittsburgh on November 16th in that game. So. By the way, if you're not making that trip, you need to try to figure a way to do it. That's going to be – I hear there's going to be a lot of Clemson fans up there. So what happened, Alex, was a few years ago, Clemson went up there, and people were – the whole – Pittsburgh gets a bad rap sometimes. Like, they don't realize how nice it actually is.
Well, because really, I feel like what most people know about Pittsburgh is like, oh, the Steelers are there and everybody moved away in the 80s. I feel like that's all everybody really knows about Pittsburgh.
It gets a bad rap. And so people who go, they're like, oh, my gosh, I didn't realize Pittsburgh was that nice of a city and was that beautiful and there all these things you can do there. Pittsburgh's a good trip.
We had a great time in Pittsburgh.
We did. And so it's a great trip. I know a lot of Clemson fans came back, and they loved it. And, they talked about it. So I know a lot of other Clemson fans now are going this year. So you're going to see a lot of Clemson fans go because of that reason. And then the Tigers are good. And that's going to cause a little bit more people to go this year than probably it was a few years ago when Clemson was struggling that season. So I think all that you throw it into it, you're going to have a good representation of Clemson fans at Pitt that day. So it's going to be a good crowd. I think it'll be a decent atmosphere. Should be a fun game. It's going to be fun doing it. And then the Tigers, of course, wrap up the regular season against the Citadel and then against South Carolina, who, Alex, right now,
they look like a much improved football team and a very dangerous football team because of the way they play on defense.
Their defense, their front four is as good as anybody in the country right now. They're going to be a problem for everybody on their schedule, starting with Texas A&M this week.
I think Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M's going down this weekend. I think Texas A&M is going down in Williams-Brice. The crowd's going to be waving the little handkerchiefs. It's going to be loud. And you know what they say about Texas A&M? This applies to them. You got 2 quarterbacks, you really have none. And that's what I think about Texas A&M. I don't think
it's not good against a defense like that. And listen, if they win, then I guess South Carolina jumps Clemson in the polls because that's what happened every week. Every big SEC game. I'm going to go back in time. You ready? So a few weeks ago, who was it? Alabama played Tennessee. No, LSU played Ole Miss. LSU beat Ole Miss. LSU jumps Clemson. The next week, Tennessee plays Alabama. Tennessee wins. Tennessee jumps Clemson. The next week, Texas A&M plays LSU. Beats LSU. The next week, Texas A&M jumps Clemson.
So whoever wins the Kirk Herbstreit SEC on ABC is going to jump Clemson.
Is going to jump Clemson. That's South Carolina this week. So that's South Carolina game. So if South Carolina beats Texas A&M, I guess the game
they're going to jump from 27 to number 10 or something.
To number 10 or something. They're going to put them at number 10 in the poll and jump Clemson. 5-3 South Carolina will be above 7-1 Clemson. So, but because that's the way it works in the SEC. That's the way it works. So anyway, as I digress, let's move along, Alex. Let's move along.
Yeah. Clemson, a big weekend in Death Valley, obviously hosting another night game against Louisville, but also a big weekend for the Tigers because, 2 of the greatest players of my formative years, Tajh Boyd and Sammy Watkins, are going to be inducted in the Clemson Athletic Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Alex, and I want to ask you about it because you watched them as a fan in those times. I covered them, obviously, and it was awesome covering Tajh. Tajh Boy to this day is still one of the greatest guys I've ever met in my life. And he makes it a point to come up and talk to us every time he sees us. Doesn't matter if he ain't seen us in 6 months or just yesterday. Tajh comes up, shakes our hands, asks how things are going. His mom, Carla, love her to death. I see her all the time around town in Clemson. Just great people. His late dad, Tim, was a great guy as well. His brother, man, what another great young man. I love talking to him. Don't see him as much anymore. He's doing other things in his life. He was in the Navy and traveling around. And so, but just great people. And then Sammy. Sammy's like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I mean, always got a smile. Always is the thing I love about Sammy Watkins, as popular as he got, and he was very popular by the time he was a senior at Clemson. A junior at Clemson. He did every single media availability asked of him. And not only did he do it, he'd also walk to the side and talk to the media guys. Because trust me, some of the guys don't do that. He'd step over to the side, and if you had to do a one-on-one, he'd talk to you. I appreciate guys like that. And this is what I remember about Sammy Watkins, and I'll let you explain here in a second your side. The Orange Bowl, he just had 16 catches for 227 yards, 2 touchdowns, MVP of the game. He was up there, had to do the whole thing with ESPN and all that, did all the interviews on the field and everything. He comes in, Alex, and he is obviously exhausted. He's obviously beat up because when he took off his shoulder pads, I never seen so many bruises on one guy in my entire life. I think he had broken ribs. I mean, he was so bruised and battered. I mean, he gave it his all in that game. Now, I don't know if he had broken ribs or not, but it looked like it. That's how bruised his body was. Even though he was tired, even though he was in pain, he sat there and talked to every single one of us in the media for another 30 minutes. That's how good of a guy that guy is. And I will forever remember that, because some guys, they don't give us that kind of time. And so I appreciate Sammy Watkins. And those are the things I remember about those guys as players that I'll take with me forever.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously for me, a little different. 2011, I was in the 6th grade or something, 5th grade, 6th grade, I think. And, after that 2010 season, it was real tough at Northwest Middle School, walking down the hallways after that season. But in 2011, when Sammy comes in and that recruiting class comes in and, Tajh finds his footing, is really like the first time that I got to experience kind of the things that I grew up reading about and hearing about. When Clemson's 8-0 and they're going into Georgia Tech looking like a national title contender, when they knock off Auburn at the beginning of the year, and obviously Sammy and Tajh had a great game that day as well. But that's the first time I really got to experience kind of that magic, that Tiger fever type feeling in my life. So that's the first thing I remember. Obviously, they won the ACC and got Clemson back to where Clemson wanted to be. I mean, I remember after the 2010 season, the people that we tailgated with, not to throw anybody under the bus, the person that ran our tailgate was like, man, they're terrible. They need to fire Dabo, and sold their tailgating equipment and sold their spot, and we're moving on. Now, this person has since moved back into the Clemson family. But that 2011 team, really without expectation, just burst onto the scene. And those two guys were a big part of it, and just dynamic guys. You talk about dynamic personalities too. Tajh Boyd. When I think about Tajh Boyd, I don't think about football either. I think about Tajh, the person I got to know. I worked his football camp when I was a senior in high school, and kind of got to know him a little bit there. And then one day my freshman year of college, I'm walking down Library Bridge. I'd seen Tajh the one time, and he's shooting a commercial or something, and walks over to me in the middle of it. Is like, hey man, how's it going? I hadn't seen you in a while. What's going on? And just walks with me for 5 minutes to my class, just talking to me about whatever. So that's kind of what I think about with Tajh Boyd. Or when he's was hanging out with us one time and saw 2 snakes on the dock.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
down by the lake. Those are kind of the things that I think about with Tajh Boyd, and just more the person that I got to know. But obviously, you talk about 2 people that did something for Clemson football. You already recognize C.J. Spiller with the Ring of Honor, who Dabo talked about as being the little sprinkle of a flame that kept things going. Well, if they were the sprinkle of the flame, then Tajh Boyd and Sammy Watkins were the gasoline that really got Clemson on the national picture.
Absolutely. And speaking of Coach Swinney, he had a lot to say about these 2 guys and what they meant to the Clemson football program and how they got where Clemson is right now. So here's Coach Swinney on those 2 guys.
I mean, I can't have enough words for what they've meant to the program, honestly. I mean, Tajh was my first quarterback. He was a part of the Dandy Dozen. And, just helped us build a great foundation and helped us do things that had never been done and things that we hadn't done in forever around here. Winning 10 games for the first time in 20 years. Winning the ACC for the first time in 20 years. These are things now that you think about that, I mean, you go 20 years. Now we don't win one in 2 years, and it's, we don't go to the playoff in 3 years or Final Four. It's like, what's wrong with everybody? So he did some things that were pretty special from a program standpoint. Great leader. He's a Clemson man. I mean, he really has just done an awesome job. And it's been fun now to be able to do life with him on this side of things and watch him grow as a coach. I mean, he's really, really talented. He's really gifted. He's very smart, understands the game. He's great, with the kids. He connects very well. Obviously, he loves Clemson and he believes in who we are as a program. So, it's just been awesome. Again, to watch what he did through his program and watch how he handled some adversity and some success, but to see him walk off that field and lead us to our first BCS win against Ohio State there in that Orange Bowl, was a pretty special moment. To see him as a father now and is really special. And then Sammy Watkins, he came here. I always say he's the most low maintenance superstar I've ever recruited. I would probably say he and Trevor Lawrence. Just, I mean, zero drama, zero anything. I mean, just showed up, ready to go. And just a great worker and truly he's just a beautiful football player. I mean, just amazing to watch him practice. I mean, just different from the time he got here, and every single week that he was on the field, he created problems for people. I think about the kick return he had up in Maryland to help bring us back up there. It was unbelievable. I think we were down 18 maybe twice in that game, and I think about his first catch. He just ran a hitch and he took it to the house. I think about the RPO. This is kind of when RPOs were just kind of coming about that we hit on Georgia on the Bang 8, and just so many great plays from Sammy Watkins. Obviously, the way he finished his career with a record in the Orange Bowl, all the catches that he had. I mean, he was just amazing. I remember on the headsets vividly. We ran a little play early in the game. Might have been the first series or second series. Tajh Boyd rips off like a 40-yard run, and they couldn't catch him. And I remember, this is early, I'm on the headsets. I was like, boys, if they ain't catching Tajh, they're in trouble. They ain't catching none of the rest of these dudes. And Sammy was a problem. So just a great human being, one of my favorite guys. And same thing with him. I got a chance to be back in that same stadium and watch him make 2 of the biggest plays in the game in the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl. I got a chance to see that live. He's a great father. He's a great husband. I mean, he's a great spirit. Love talking to him, and certainly incredibly deserving of this. But he was one of those guys that helped change us. He came in, he and Nuke, and that whole group of receivers. Martavis and Adam Humphreys and Sharon, Jerron Brown. That whole little group that we had back in 2011, which was Sammy's freshman year, just kind of helped put us on another level with Tajh Boyd back there running the show. It was something to behold.
Yeah, that was Dabo Swinney talking about Tajh Boyd and Sammy Watkins. And I remember the run Tajh had in that game. Dabo was just talking about it because Tajh, as good as he is, he wasn't the fastest guy in the world, right? I mean, that just wasn't Tajh's thing. And he just ran away from the Ohio State linebackers and corners and safeties. And so we're all like, what in the world? And
yeah,
Dabo
I was talking to an Ohio State fan a few weeks ago who had forgotten about that game, and I had to remind them of how great that game was.
Yeah, it was a great game. Well, it was a great football game.
It was a heck of a football game.
It was one of the best football games I've ever watched.
A mistake gave Ohio State a chance to get back in that ball game at the end.
It did. The best story about that, this is my favorite Dabo Swinney Tajh Boyd story. I think I've shared this many times on this podcast, so you guys have probably heard it. But I love to tell it because it's funny. Dabo was with us one night with all the media guys, and we're talking, and he says, he's like, I told Tajh, I said, listen, whatever you do, because he said, whatever you do, we got the ball back and we can run out the clock. He's like, all we got to do is just run the ball and we'll win the game. Whatever you do, don't throw the ball. So Tajh's like, okay, coach, I got you. And Jermon Hopper, Tajh tells the story. Jermon Hopper comes over to him. And he says, hey, Tajh, I'm open on the slant, man. It's open every time. It's like nobody's covering me. Trust me.
Typical receiver move.
Yeah, trust me. Throw me the ball. Trust me. It's going to be a first down. We're going to win the game. Game's over. And Tajh's like, yeah, whatever. So Tajh's like, all of a sudden he got in his head. And Tajh is like, he gets up there to the line of scrimmage, and he kind of sees the look Jermon Hopper's talking about. So he's thinking, hey, I'm going to throw it to him. So he was supposed to – Tajh Boyd went rogue on the play, draws back, and throws the ball. And of course, the linebacker intercepts it for for Ohio State. And all of a sudden, the Buckeyes got the ball, in plus territory with a chance to win the game. Luckily, Stephon Anthony bailed him out, though, with one of the greatest interceptions I've ever seen by a linebacker. But yeah,
John spot on about the talent of that offense. Just a super fun group to watch. I watched them plenty of times.
Watkins, Hopkins, Bryant, Brown, Ellington, Dwayne Allen. Back in the day, I mean, that 2011 team was loaded. Also don't forget about Hot Rod. Roderick McDowell, he's another guy that he was on that 2013 team that won the game. Actually had 1,000 yards that season. Became the 13th Clemson running back to ever go for over 1,000 yards. A lot of people forget that, but Hot Rod was great, man. And so don't forget him as well. He's one of those great stories, man, where he just kind of hung in there, got his opportunity because he came around when they had C.J. Spiller, they had James Davis. They had Andre Ellington. He's like, man, am I ever going to get to play? And, he got his opportunity and he made the best of it.
Hot Rod, this is another thing about Tajh and Sammy. I think Hot Rod's another good example of this too. That era of Clemson football under Dabo is where, the Clemson program took its shape. Mm-hmm. It took its current shape. It developed its culture under the leadership of those players. Mm-hmm. It was really the players, that initiated a lot of it. A coach can tell a locker room stuff all day long, but it takes leadership from the locker room. It takes leadership from the locker room, and those guys were a big part of it. And I want to shout out Hot Rod. Hot Rod's a college football coach at Jacksonville State. Who's making the move up to FBS. He's a running backs coach over there, so he's in the profession too, and got his start in the profession at Clemson as well.
Absolutely. It's just, by the way, just so you guys know, I think it's going to be halftime. They're going to honor Tajh Boyd and Sammy Watkins into the Athletic Hall of Fame. So make sure you stay in your seats at halftime so you can watch that, and should be a great experience again. I mean, to see Sammy coming back, man, I'm looking forward to seeing him. To see Tajh obviously get his opportunity. I see Tajh a lot around town, but still though, to see Tajh get what he deserves, Tajh deserves if anybody is Clemson, it's Tajh Boyd.
Absolutely.
Tajh Boyd is Clemson.
This guy moved back to Clemson after he finished his shot at being a pro, and just worked in the community. I mean, this guy literally just moved back to Clemson. He didn't move back to Clemson to be a coach. He was working at Lakeside Lodge. He was just trying to be in the community, and that's how much Tajh loves Clemson.
Yeah,
and I think that's extremely notable. You don't see that happen a lot, especially from a superstar player like that. To move back just to be in Clemson.
Yeah. And so now he's a member of the staff. Now he's a member of the coaching staff. Dabo talked about how much he's improved, how talented he is as a coach as well. So, so make sure you stay in your seats at halftime and watch Tajh and Sammy get inducted into the Clemson Athletic Hall of Fame. Alex, that's going to move us along as we now get set for the game that everybody doesn't know what to think yet. I think there's from some of the comments we're seeing on YouTube and Facebook, we're seeing different people. Like some feel good about Clemson, some don't. Some are some are concerned for different reasons. Some giving Louisville credit.
Some people just throwing out random tidbits of Clemson information.
Exactly. I mean, but this game with Louisville, Dabo Swinney spent a lot of time. When Dabo Swinney spends a lot of time in his press conference on a team, it tells you how good they are.
Yep.
And Dabo spent a long time. I'll tell you how long. These are my notes. It's a whole page of notes, if you can see them, that I wrote down, of Dabo talking about the different players and what he expects. And it starts off at quarterback, where he says this guy is a pro. And you know what? Dabo found out later that Dabo didn't realize that the guy had been in college football for 7 years. And Dabo's like, well, that explains why I think he's a pro. Because
he's older than Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
Let's be honest. This guy's my age.
Tyler Shaw, 6'5", 225 pounds, started his career at Oregon. I think RJ Mickett was talking to us today about how he actually was at Oregon when RJ was being recruited to Oregon, and he was his host. He was RJ's host. And so RJ talked about how long ago that was. RJ, I think, said he was like a junior or something in high school. RJ's a senior, a fifth-year senior at Clemson now. So gives you an idea how long ago that was, that Shouts was at Oregon. But look at his numbers. He's completing 65% of his passes. I think he's got 19 touchdowns to 5 interceptions or something like that. Or 20
to 5. Yep.
20 to 5. He's thrown for, I think, the second most yards in the ACC, not named Cameron Ward. He's been very productive, completing, like I said, a high percentage of his passes. Good quarterback rating.
64% of his passes.
He doesn't get sacked much, so he's very smart. Gets the football out. He can be a guy that can get sacked because he's not that mobile as he was when he was younger. Because he's trying to protect his body more, so he wants to throw the football more than run it. But so he's a guy, Alex, that we talked about this earlier. This is a guy you have to be concerned about at quarterback because he is a veteran quarterback.
Yeah, I mean he's averaging almost 9 yards per completion, too. So he's got receivers that can make plays. That's what that means. That means he's got receivers that can make plays, and a lot of that comes from their run game. And the way they're able to set things up there. Brown has 649 yards rushing. They got a couple other backs.
Averaging, 7 yards a carry, Isaac Brown is?
Yep, 7.5 yards a carry. And then Watson, the change of pace back, is averaging 8.2.
Yeah.
He doesn't have as many carries, and he only has 27 carries, if that tells you anything about, kind of the play distribution here. Honestly, they're pretty balanced. They've thrown it 244 times, and they've run it, or 284 times, and they've run it 244 times. So they're a balanced football team. Like you said, well-coached football team. Jeff Brom, if there's anybody that can coach a mature quarterback, it's going to be Jeff Brom.
Exactly.
He's got the experience to do it. And we got some people in the comments that were mentioning their defense. I think that's where you really have to take advantage of opportunities with Clemson. You can't have wasted possessions. You can't be skipping the ball to a receiver. You can't be turning the ball over because this is a Louisville offense that they're gonna score. I'm not saying they're gonna score 40 points or anything crazy like that against this Clemson defense, but they're going to score. So you got to take advantage of your opportunities and on both sides of the ball in this game.
Yeah, I understand what people are saying that Clemson's opportunities are going to be there on defense because of the way they play. But if you also watch enough of Louisville, because of the way they play, they cause turnovers. They cause bad passes to be made. This is going to be a game where Cade Klubnik's going to have to really, really be on target. He's going to have to really, really be in the zone.
I mean, this team,
they're going to try to confuse them.
They only have 2 interceptions on the year. So it's not like you're playing.
Corrected. I'm thinking Pitt maybe.
Yeah, you're not playing a chaos defense. Now
they do bring pressure though. They
bring pressure. They got 17 sacks.
Yeah, they bring pressure.
So they bring some pressure. I wanted to bring this up too. We talked a lot. I know we went at the Clemson defensive haters last week. I kind of wanted to bring this up again because me and you talked about it in our bonus off-air podcast the other day. Right. This Clemson, you think about the differences between a Wes Goodwin defense and a Brent Venables defense, and I think about both of them as different kinds of snakes.
Yeah, right? You did. That's a great example.
So the Brent Venables defense, that's like a viper. The Brent Venables defense is going to strike you and it's going to knock you out early. The Wes Goodwin defense is more like a boa constrictor. You might be able to get some yards early. You might be able to move the ball on your scripted drive. But the longer the game goes on, the tighter and tighter that boa constrictor gets around you until your eyeballs pop out. So that's kind of what I want to think. What you need to think about there. And this Louisville team, they might move the ball early. It's very possible they're going to move the ball early. They got weapons.
They're going to move the ball. I can tell you that.
But if you think Wes Goodwin's not making adjustments, if you're living in some kind of fantasy land watching this Clemson team play all year and think they don't make adjustments,
you're not
sorely mistaken.
No, I agree 100% on that. Alex, a guy who concerns me, and Dabo brought him up also, you mentioned Isaac Brown. That's one guy. But Ja'Cory Brooks, excellent wide receiver. Number 1, as Dabo calls him, 6'3", 195 pounds. This guy is a playmaker. You want to look at why they came back from 20-0 down to beat Boston College? It was Brooks. He was making plays everywhere on the field. And so, he's just going to throw it to him and say, go up and get it, dog, because you're a dog. I'm going to feed you. And that's what he does. And
he's got 44 catches for 799 yards and 8 touchdowns.
And the next
guess how many yards per catch he's averaging?
How much?
18.2.
Exactly. And what does the next guy have on their team? Was it like 20 catches?
Bell has 20 catches.
Yeah.
So Brooks is targeted twice as much as Bell is. So it'll be interesting to see how Clemson kind of schemes it up.
And Alex, every team that plays him is safety high on him. They're bracketing him. They find ways to get him open. Jeff Brom is a great coach. He understands offense, football. He finds ways to get that guy to football.
And you're gonna see Clemson play man coverage. It's gonna happen. So don't think Clemson's gonna be just bracketing the whole time. They're gonna play man coverage
because that's what Clemson does.
And Avion Terrell is going to be the guy doing it most of the time.
What a great matchup that's going to be. You got Avion Terrell, who doesn't allow anything.
Well, and you also
everything.
Here's the thing that should make you feel a little better, Clemson fans, going into the weekend. In each one of these games this year, where Avion Terrell has been matched up with a dynamic receiver that everybody talked about all week, Avion Terrell has balled out. Much like his brother, he doesn't care what people are saying about the receiver he's covering all week. He's going to step up and make plays. So I think you can rest assured in that Avion Terrell, he hears the criticism. He hears the people talking about Jalen Brooks, and he's going to be ready to go.
I got to put this up just because it's a shot at Georgia, and I have to do it. John, love it, buddy. Louisville quarterback taking the Stetson Bennett 7-year curriculum. Wonder if he'll get a degree, unlike Bennett,
at an elite academic institution like Louisville, nonetheless.
Yes, exactly. Both are elite academic institutions. I think he's already got his degree. To be honest,
he's probably working on like his third.
I probably working on his third master's degree or something. I do, but think he's a graduate student though. Anyway, so but I like that. But yeah, Alex, I love this Louisville offense. I really do. I've watched them all year. They're fun to watch. They can score points on anybody. They're going to score on Clemson. And so that brings us over to what you kind of brought up a little while ago. It brings you over to Louisville's defense against Clemson's offense. Now Clemson's got weapons too. And as you mentioned, Louisville not doing that great, turning the football, getting interceptions and things of that nature. But it's still an aggressive defense. You know, Dabo Swinney talked about their defensive ends that start off with, I guess it's how you say it, Ashton Genelette. Is that it? Am I saying that right?
Haven't looked at the pronunciation guide, if I'm being completely honest with you.
I hadn't either. And then Tramel Logan, both guys, 6'4" is Logan, 250 pounds. Ashton is 6'3", 275 pounds. So that's a big defensive end over there. He's going to cause some problems. Dabo mentioned how he's all over the place. He's giving them problems. He gives everybody problems. Desmond Tell, their nose tackle. Look, Louisville has their issues are on the back end, as Alex just told us about the only 2 interceptions. Their front four, though, is as good as anybody you're going to see. They really are. And that's where Clemson has to win that matchup. If there's a matchup that I'm saying Clemson has to win if they're going to win this game, it's got to be Clemson's offensive line against that defensive line. They got to neutralize those guys because they love to hit the quarterback. They don't always get sacks, just like Clemson doesn't always get sacks. But they love to pressure the quarterback and get after him. And they'll do it just with their front four at times. They're very stingy with the run game, and so this is a legit defensive line. Their front four is as good as anybody. Now on the back end, that's where they've had their problems, and that's where Clemson's going to try to exploit them. Even though, with that said, they're going to play a lot of man defense, which is kind of crazy too.
Well, and that's where it brings us to an earlier question, if I can find it in the chat, because we've had a lot of comments today. Somebody asking about Bryant Wesco Jr. If Wesco's available, that would be a huge asset for Clemson in this game against that secondary.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see. Dabo said he's day-to-day, said that he got back. How did Dabo say it? Did he say he practiced or he said he was at practice? I can't. There's a difference in how Dabo says it. If
Dabo was listed on the depth chart.
Yes. He's
so
listed, but it's how Dabo says it.
Yes, because if he's at practice, that just means he's not, in the rehab room the whole time. That means he's at the field.
That means he's at the field, and it means he's probably wearing yellow jersey, stuff like that. If he's practicing, that's different. That means he's probably in a green jersey, and they're trying to see if he's going to be available for the week. So if he's practicing, which is what I think Dabo said, then that means there's a possibility he could play. Now, one guy's not going to play is Tyler Brown. But that's okay. I don't think they need Tyler Brown to play right now. I think they're good enough at receiver with the way everybody else is playing that they're going to be fine. Do you think Wesco will play Saturday? That's what we're trying to figure out, Alan. And Dabo says day-to-day, man. He's day-to-day.
He's day-to-day.
Alex, you're day-to-day? I'm day-to-day.
Yep. Another area in this game where I think Clemson has a distinct advantage, special teams. Louisville, coming into this game, their kicker's Travelstead is 9 of 15 on field goal attempts. Now, he's 1 of 5 on attempts over 50 yards.
There we go.
So as long as 56. So they try him from deep, but he's missed one from 40 to 49, and he's missed one from 20 to 29.
Okay, so he's a little inconsistent.
But he's got a leg, but just not always as consistent.
Right. Where Clemson, of course, Hoosier is, doing really well. The only misses he's got is because somebody wasn't doing their job in front of them. But that's what Clemson's got to fix, right? They got to make sure that they fix that offense, that line, that special teams offensive line during place kicks, because obviously that gave them troubles at Florida State. I had 2 kicks blocked in that game, and you don't want to have, I believe, an extra point too, wasn't it? In that game, so it was 3 kicks, or was it? I'm just mistaken. It was one field goal.
The 2 field goals. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The 2 field goals. Okay. So So anyway, that's something they want to make sure of. But yeah, Hauser, man, what was he? 5 for 5 against Florida State. Tied a record 5 of 7 actually, because he was 5 for 5 in what he could control.
5 for 5 on kicks that got past the line of scrimmage.
Right. Stuff he could control. Because he can't do anything about guys coming in there blocking his kick.
Question from Tiger Fan 24: would you guys consider it a disappointment if Clemson gives up 28 or more points to Louisville. I don't think it's a disappointment if you give up 28 points to Louisville. I mean, I think if you give up 42 points to Louisville, then that's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation.
It's a completely different conversation.
We're disappointed for a different reason.
But if you give up 28 points, if you give up 31 points, I think 35 would be a disappointment for this defense. But 28 points, I wouldn't be disappointed.
Louisville's averaging basically 37 points a game.
Yeah.
So if you give up 28 points to Louisville, I think you're doing okay. To be honest with you, I think you're fine because I think it's going to take Clemson's offense is going to have to score, in the 30s to win this game. Now the question is, and I'll look at this as I'm talking to you guys. What's Louisville in scoring defense? The Cardinals giving up 25 points a game, basically. Clemson's giving up 23. So yeah, first team to 30, I think wins this game. What do you think, Alex? I mean, I really do. I think that's the case.
I think you're right. I think it's first team to 30. I think Clemson, you don't want to start slow in Death Valley and let Louisville hang around. Louisville is not a team you want to hang around.
The best
this is a team that if you let this team hang around, they're going to get you.
The best news for Clemson is this a night game.
Night game in Death Valley. It's going to be rocking. Man, Louisville, I'm going to be missing it.
Yeah. Louisville probably was like, man, could they pick a worse time for
shoot?
Yes, exactly. They said shoot, exactly what they said, because they know this is going to be a challenge. Clemson is going to be off the chain. 81,000. The game's already expected to be a sellout. Louisville will bring a good crowd up. They always do. Louisville actually loves coming to Clemson. They love the tailgating here. The Louisville fans love Clemson. They always talk about it when they come. The media members talk about it when they come up here. Now, they also think that they get the officials help them out a little bit, help Clemson out a little bit. I've heard that a few times, but they still love the Clemson people, and they enjoy the environment and the atmosphere of what Death Valley offers. So that's going to be, man, it's going to be off the chain, Alex. It really is Saturday night, man. I wish you could be here, buddy, but if I'm going to have to stay up till 4 a.m. writing, at least it's going to be, at least it'll be a good atmosphere, right? At least it's not like App State. App State was a great atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, but it's like they're playing App State is what I mean.
At least you're playing a power conference football team.
Exactly.
Playing in a meaningful conference game.
Exactly, a meaningful conference game. That's the best way. Under the lights. That's the best way to say it. Sorry, Cameron, if I took a shot at your Mountaineers there, but I did intentionally. No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be, like I said, Clemson's defense is going to have its work cut out for them against this Louisville offense, and that's why Clemson's offense is going to have to come to play. They really do. And I mentioned earlier, I think it comes down to the offensive line, as every game comes down to the lines of scrimmage. Whoever wins that battle is going to win the game. It's as easy as let's think about it. In all honesty, how many times does a team who gets their butts whipped up front win the game? It doesn't happen often. Seldom does it happen.
If that happens, it's because your defense has like 3 pick sixes or they fumble the ball or something. It's some kind of crazy something. Exactly. Special teams touchdown, something like that. The
game is won or lost at the lines of scrimmage. That is the beauty of football. No matter what you do to it, that will never change. The only way you can change it, and the NFL is doing everything they can to do it, is you just put flags on them and you start playing 7-on-7. That's the only thing that's going to change how football's played, because the game is still about what happens at the lines of scrimmage and who wins at the lines of scrimmage. And when it comes to that, I like Clemson in these matchups. I really do. I think Clemson's offensive line, one of the better offensive lines in the ACC. I think Clemson's given up 6 sacks as a team, but only 2 are charged to the offensive line.
Yep.
The other 4 have come from either running backs or Cade Klubnik. So, that I'll take, or the tight ends. So, like 2 on the offensive line. I like that matchup, especially considering Louisville's not getting to the quarterback as they normally do, as they have in years past. What I mean by that is from a sack total.
And you can get after Louisville. They've given up 12 sacks. You can get after them.
12 sacks is not bad though. That's not too bad either. But it's not better as Clemson. Now, how many of those were on their offensive line as well? So, but I still like the matchup when you look at Clemson running the football. Louisville runs the football well too. And Clemson's this is going to be good. Here's an interesting thing to pay attention to. The last 3 games, Clemson's held Florida State to 22 yards rushing. They've held Wake Forest to 87 yards rushing, and they held Virginia to 68 yards on the ground. All right. So before that, Clemson did not do very well stopping people running the football. So what are we going to get? Are we going to get the last 3 weeks Clemson defense is shutting down the run? Or are we going to get the first 4 weeks of the season that struggled to stop people from running the football? And Dabo Swinney mentioned that today. He talked about how one thing he's concerned about is Louisville's ability to run that zone play and then that zone stretch, and then they cut it back. And he says they're working on this a lot. Started working on it yesterday, and they worked on it some last week. He says guys tend to have tendencies on this defense to where they don't stay in their lanes. It's very important they stay in their rush lanes. If they stay in their lanes, they're going to make tackles and make plays, but they got to stay in their lanes.
Yep, you got to be disciplined against a well-coached football team. I mean, it's that simple. Louisville's well-coached. Jeff Brom has a proven track record of having well-coached football teams. You got to be disciplined.
I like R.J. Mickens today. He said that we have to, as a defense, we're either really, really good, great, or we just basically suck. he's like, there's like no in between. He's like, we can be really good, but then we have those bonehead plays. And that's kind of what Dabo's talking about too. It's like, guys, what are you doing? So the last 3 weeks, it looks like they've cleaned up some of those bonehead plays in the run defense, and that's really helped them. I asked him, I said, with some of that inexperience, and RJ didn't really want to throw any of his teammates under the bus. But to me, I think a lot of that is inexperience. I just think you got guys out there that are young, that haven't played, and they've given up some plays.
Or guys are playing in different positions. That could be, a lot of it could be attributed to that early in the year too.
Exactly. So, well, hey, we appreciate you guys joining us. We hope you guys got your Clemson fix in. We got ours in. We're ready to play Saturday night in Death Valley. Clemson versus LSU. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I'm ready to watch some baseball. Baseball tonight. I kind of my message to the Yankees fans would be, if you wanted to not feel as depressed going into tonight being down 3-0 in a playoff baseball series, you should have watched the documentary on the 2004 Red Sox team that came back from down 3-0 to the Yankees and ended up winning the World Series. So, maybe there's your inspiration, Yankees fans. But hopefully next week, the Red Sox will still have won 2 World Series since the Yankees won theirs, 15 years ago?
Alex, who was a player on those Red Sox teams?
Dave Roberts.
And who does Dave Roberts coach or manage?
The Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, I think he's sending that message to his team. By the way, the Dodgers will not win tonight, Alex. You know why?
Because they're going to play a bullpen game.
No, the baseball gods have already jinxed them. Fox has already jinxed them to the baseball gods because Fox has already done it a couple times in this series, and we'll get off after this. Game 2, they put up, but the Dodgers gave the Yankees 1 hit through 8 innings in Game 2, and the Yankees and they put up the graphic. The Yankees have not been allowed under 2 hits in a World Series ever.
Yeah, and then they were like, the Yankees hadn't, they hadn't been shut out since the Marlins did it in 2003.
Well, they hadn't been shut out in a World Series game.
Yeah, by the Marlins since 2003.
Yeah, so and then what do they do? What happens after that? Bam, hits a 2-run homer. It's like, stop it, Fox. Understand the game of baseball. You don't throw up graphics like that until the game is over.
It's because they don't have the guy who should be calling the World Series. It was nice yesterday. I had Monday Night Football up and I had the World Series, so I could hear Joe Buck while I was watching the World Series because that's the way it should be. I don't understand the Joe Buck hate, but that's the way it should be.
I didn't hear either one because I just had the Steelers network on. I was listening to the Steelers network and not paying attention to what Buck.
Come for Clemson football, stay for Steelers, World Series, and everything in between. That's the Believe in Clemson football motto right there.
That's what we do. As you can see, it's Victory Tuesday as I'm wearing my Steelers hoodie here. So there you go. There it is, Alex. Pull it out. There it is.
There we go.
There it is. Go Steelers. Let's go Steelers, man. That's what we do. Anyway, for Alex Dodd, I'm Will Vandervoort. I mentioned that. Thanks to head coach Dabo Swinney as well. For Alex Dodd, I'm Will Vandervoort. We'll talk to you next time on Believe in Clemson Football.